There are so many different diets and foods that you can eat as a thyroid patient that it can be hard to figure out what you should actually do. One thing is for certain though, the food that you put into your body can exert either a positive or a negative influence on your thyroid. Your job as a thyroid patient is to continually put as many positively influencing food into your body as possible over and over again. If you can continue to do this over a long period of time, then yeah, you might put yourself in a situation where you're less reliant on your thyroid medication. And intuitively, a lot of people know that this is true, which is why you'll find all sorts of information about diets on the internet. One of the diets that is often touted as a cure-all to just about every condition is the carnivore diet. Proponents of this diet suggest that eating like our ancestors did has the ability to put multiple diseases into remission, help with weight loss, and more. But is this really true? And is this the type of diet that you should consider using as a thyroid patient? My response? No, at least not for everyone. Will there be situations in which it may make sense for you to go carnivore, or in which certain people will gain benefits by doing so? Of course, because everyone is unique and there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all diet. But does this mean that carnivore should be the recommended base diet for all thyroid problems and all thyroid conditions? Definitely not. If you are thinking about going carnivore and you have a thyroid problem, here are a few things to consider before doing so. Number one, carbohydrates are needed for optimal thyroid function. I think most people listening to this are probably already familiar with the carnivore diet, but in case you aren't, here is a quick primer. The carnivore diet is a diet that primarily focuses on the intake of meat, but it also allows for some animal products such as eggs and butter. This diet is very high in protein and fat, but is severely lacking in carbohydrates. This is by design because the proponents of the ketogenic diet and the carnivore diet suggest that carbohydrates are primarily responsible for the diseases that plague mankind. According to them, diseases like cancer, diabetes, heart disease, stroke, and more all stem from increased carbohydrate intake in the average population. This stance is represented in the diet and foods that people who believe this recommend. In other words, they will strongly recommend that you remove all sources of carbohydrates from your diet as soon as possible. They justify this stance by making the claim that carbohydrates are not considered essential, which is not true for fats and proteins. As far as nutrition goes, the body has an absolute need for certain fats called essential fats and certain proteins called essential amino acids. Because the body is unable to produce these essential fats and essential proteins, they must be consumed from your diet. You'll notice though that there are no essential carbohydrates. So the logic goes that you'll be able to get everything that the body needs by eating just fats and proteins and by 100% removing carbohydrates. While this is technically true, there's a little more to the story. The body doesn't necessarily have a need for carbohydrates to survive, but it appears to need carbohydrates to thrive. And for the purpose of living a long and healthy life, most of us really want to thrive, not just exist. In women, low-carb diets have been shown to cause problems with the menstrual cycle, and in men, they've been shown to cause low testosterone. But more important than both of these is the fact that very low carbohydrate diets, sustained over a long period of time, have been shown to cause negative effects on thyroid function. This is seen in studies such as this one. What researchers see is that as carbohydrate intake decreases, the conversion of active thyroid hormones decreases as well. This is reflected in thyroid lab tests as a decrease in T3 levels, an increase in T4 levels, and usually no change in the TSH. If you aren't familiar with thyroid lab tests, allow me to explain what this means. The TSH is a measure of total thyroid function in the body. So at first glance, you might see that there is no change in the TSH with a reduction in carbohydrates and think that this is a good thing. But the problem with decreasing your carbohydrate intake doesn't come from the change in the TSH. It comes from the change in circulating thyroid hormones and their relation to one another. T4 thyroid hormone is considered an inactive thyroid hormone, which acts as a reservoir that your body can draw upon to create the most active thyroid hormone known as T3. The shift that is seen in thyroid hormones when the body is in a low carbohydrate state is to reduce the conversion of T4 into T3, thereby lowering the most active thyroid hormone. We see this same thyroid lab pattern in people who are chronically ill or in those who are under extreme stress. In other words, low carbohydrate diets cause changes in thyroid function which are not seen in healthy people. The advocates of the carnivore diet are aware of this, but they will try to suggest that the changes in thyroid function are really an adaptive response and may confer some benefit on longevity. It's hard to know what exactly these changes mean, but there's no question that at least for some people, going carnivore may be enough to make their hypothyroid symptoms worse or push some people into full-blown hypothyroidism. This doesn't mean, by the way, that everyone who goes carnivore will have or experience problems with their thyroid, but it does mean that it may cause issues for certain individuals. We'll talk more about when it makes sense to accept these changes, but for now, let's talk about another reason why you probably don't want to go carnivore. Number 2, decreased carbohydrate intake increases sex hormone binding globulin and decreases the activity of sex hormones. We know this from both real-world examples of people who have gone carnivore and shared their labs, and from research studies. They all show the same thing. As carbohydrate intake declines, sex hormone binding globulin levels increase, and free sex hormone levels decrease. For those who are unfamiliar with sex hormone binding globulin, let me share some simple details. Sex hormone binding globulin, referred to as SHBG, controls how much sex hormones your body has available for use. The higher your SHBG is, the less active your sex hormones will be. It's that simple. For men, this is seen as a decline in free testosterone levels, and for women, it's seen as a decline in free estradiol levels. The impact on both hormones is the same for both genders. It's just that the physiologic impact differs because each sex hormone is more important or less important to each of the genders. But why does this matter for thyroid patients? Aside from the fact that optimal sex hormone function is ideal if you want to live a long and healthy life, there is also a bidirectional relationship between your sex hormones and thyroid function. Thyroid hormones impact sex hormones like estrogen and testosterone. Men will see a decline in libido, erectile dysfunction, low testosterone, and decreased vitality if they also have low thyroid function. And women will see changes to their menstrual cycle, weight gain, decreased libido, and infertility if they also have a thyroid problem. In men, these symptoms are primarily related to low testosterone, and in women, they're primarily related to low estradiol. In addition to this, as estrogen levels decrease, they have an impact on thyroid binding globulin. This impact can be so significant in women who have low estrogen levels that they may need to adjust their thyroid medication to compensate. The bottom line, sex hormones and thyroid hormones are connected. Outside of the research studies that I've just mentioned here, we also have some real-world examples of people who have been on carnivore and who have shared their lab work. Dr. Paul Saladino, MD, is one of these. He has gone on record sharing his lab tests while on carnivore, including thyroid function and sex hormone function, and after the introduction of certain carbohydrates like honey and fruit. And what he shares tracks exactly with the research I just mentioned above. While on the carnivore diet, he experienced a sky-high SHBG, a low free testosterone level, a high normal TSH level, and a low T3. After adding fruits and honey to his diet at about 200 grams per day, he saw a very large drop in his SHBG level, a rise in his free testosterone level, a decrease in his TSH level, and a rise in his free T3 level. These changes in lab tests were also associated with more energy and a higher basal body temperature. What's even more interesting is that all of these changes occurred without impacting his fasting insulin level, which remained undetectable both before and after the introduction of carbohydrates. Why is this significant? Because at least anecdotally, it shows that carbohydrates are not only essential for thyroid function and sex hormone function, but also that including carbohydrates into your diet doesn't always or automatically have to impact your insulin level in a negative way. The third reason to avoid carnivore diet if you have a thyroid problem is because there are better ways to lose weight. I think one of the main reasons that people are drawn to the carnivore diet is because number one, it's relatively simple to understand, and number two, there's a promise of rapid weight gain at the end. This is particularly appealing to thyroid patients who often struggle to lose weight. But is there anything special about the carnivore diet that can't be obtained with the use of other diets? No. Some people try to suggest that the carnivore diet is superior to other weight loss diets because it results in more rapid weight loss. And while this may appear true, it's actually somewhat misleading. The weight loss associated with low carbohydrate diets will always appear more rapidly, at least in the beginning. But this is because these diets impact fluid levels as well as bowel movements. An increase in bowel movements and changes to the kidneys from changes to insulin result in the excretion of more water from the body. Because of this, it makes it look like you lose weight more rapidly than you really are. But when you break down the fat loss associated with the carnivore diet and other low-carb diets, and account for this loss in fluid, you see that there are no differences in fat loss between the carnivore diet, keto diet, and other weight loss diets. It just appears to be more effective because weight loss on the scale is more pronounced when you first start the diet. The reality is that you can absolutely lose weight at the same rate as the carnivore diet when using a healthy whole food diet. And these healthy whole food diets that include sources of carbohydrates from fruits and vegetables do not come with all the same baggage that the carnivore diet does. Reason number 4 to avoid the carnivore diet: it may cause issues with your sleep. The final nail in the coffin for the carnivore diet is that it may negatively impact your sleep. This particular issue is well known among the carnivore community and is commonly referred to as carnivore insomnia or keto insomnia. Its exact cause is not known, but it definitely has something to do with carbohydrate intake. Studies like this one show that reducing carbohydrate intake can reduce REM sleep and also increase slow wave sleep. Why is this a problem? Because thyroid patients already suffer from shorter sleep duration compared to healthy individuals. They also report decreased satisfaction with their sleep. When you add on additional factors that can make your sleep worse, you have a recipe for even worse sleep outcomes. And we know that sleep is important because it plays a role in regulating your metabolism, thyroid hormones, weight, and even your sex hormones. So anything that negatively impacts your sleep will also have some impact on these systems. But just because carnivore can impact your sleep in a negative way doesn't guarantee that it will. But because of the importance that sleep plays in your overall health, this factor should be considered, especially if you already know you have problems with sleep. With all this in mind, are there situations in which it may make sense for someone with a thyroid problem to go carnivore? And the answer is absolutely. The situations that I'm referring to are those of autoimmune thyroid disease and in thyroid patients who have a combination of a thyroid problem plus diabetes. Let's talk about the autoimmune diseases first. The reason that I think it may make sense for thyroid patients who have an autoimmune thyroid disease to use carnivore is simply because there are so few treatments for these patients out there. I'm not even saying carnivore is the best diet to use if you have an autoimmune thyroid disease like Graves' disease or Hashimoto's. But it is a really simple and easy diet for the average person to wrap their head around. If you compare the carnivore diet to another diet used for these conditions, like the AIP diet, the difference is night and day. AIP requires a more thorough understanding of food and nutrition, and it may not be as accessible to most people because of this. Carnivore, on the other hand, can be simplified into a few sentences, which means that there may be better patient compliance on this diet compared to the AIP diet. This isn't to say that other diets can't or won't work if you have an autoimmune disease, just that simplifying the nutritional aspect of diet does have its advantages. The next group of people who may want to consider going carnivore are those patients who have a thyroid problem plus diabetes. The reason for this recommendation is simple. Going carnivore has the potential to put diabetes into remission rapidly, and this will have a positive and profound impact on the body. If you are given the opportunity to remove this disease from your body, you should absolutely take it. But just like the other example, this isn't the only diet that you can use to get rid of your diabetes. It just so happens that it's relatively easy to wrap your head around, and therefore patients may be more compliant when using it. Having said all of this, even if you have a thyroid problem and you were to go carnivore, I don't see any evidence to suggest that you should be using it long term. The best way to use a diet such as this is to use it temporarily until you have gotten the problem you are trying to tackle under control. From there, I think it makes the most sense to then transition to a whole food-based diet, one which includes healthy carbohydrates in the form of fruits, vegetables, and honey. This allows you to take advantage of the potential benefits of the carnivore diet without realizing any of the long-term complications that we've discussed in this video so far. Outside of these instances and a few select others, you won't find me routinely recommending the carnivore diet for patients who have thyroid problems. For the average person, I just don't think the benefits outweigh the potential risks. If you do want to see the type of diets that I think are better for thyroid patients, I'd recommend checking out this video next.